This is going to be my try at a demo on OpenToonz, which is free. You can download it on the link found below. So first off, with the interface, there are many different sections on the interface, all found up here, and each section has their own part to play. The first section is the cleanup. This is usually for when you've scanned a document or imported a document. So I'm not going to go too much into this since I'm not using my scanner. The next one, this is where you do some changes with your palettes. So I'm not going to get into that yet. Ink and Paint is where I will be spending most of my time, where I will be doing my animation. XSheet. The XSheets in OpenToonz are like the traditional XSheets, which are vertical and not a timeline, which is horizontal. So the frame numbers go downwards. Batches is for where you can do multiple renderings of multiple different scenes, all as a batch render, and you can process them through a render farm as well. And browser, this here allows you to browse through most of your stuff, most of your projects. So all of the projects are usually set up in a root folder. They don't let you change that root folder for some reason, but we're going to work with this. So first I want to start a new project, and you can see here that this is where the root folder is created. So I want to first, in my projects folder, create a new folder, and then new project in demo, and these here will be added on. So project name, my first demo. Okay, so our project is now set up, and one of the first things I want to do, just to make sure, is I want to say save scene as in my first demo, scene 1, because you can have, as with a large film, you can have multiple scenes within one project. So everything will be stored in that one project folder. However, you can save different scenes and different all your different levels and animations and drawings. So in Ink and Paint now, I want to customize this area to have all the tools that I'm going to need to do my animation. So under Windows, the first I want to bring up is my palette. So the palette is where I will have all my colors, and I will put this up here. You just wait until it goes green and you drop it there. The level strip, I'm working on dual monitors right now, and I don't need to use this very often. I'm just going to pull that into my second monitor. The next one I'm going to need is my color palettes as well. This is the color palette, but I need my color picker now, which is going to be Studio Palette. Oh wait, not Studio Palette. Oh no, I think it is the Studio Palette, right. Then it's not the Studio Palette, it is my style editor, and I will place this at the bottom. The next I'm going to want my X sheet. So here's my X sheets. I'm going to put this on the side. And I need a toolbar to show me my tools that I have. However, one of the ways I can do it is in right-clicking on the screen, I can bring up my GUI, and I can get a toolbar added to this GUI here. However, I don't like the horizontal toolbar, so I don't use that one. I'm going to use a floating toolbar, which is very hard to dock on the side here. So I have to dock it here first, and then move this to the other side. and then just set these back up again. Okay, now these tools are going to need some options to run with it, where I can bring in my tool option bar, which will snap to the top. However, I'm going to use right here, so that is part of this window. And then I also want a console, which is my playback tools. Okay, so right now, until I start drawing, I have no styles created. So if I draw one line, there I have a style created, and I can go in and change that style. Now, a lot of people stumble on this one where they don't see the style changing, and they go and draw again, and it's the same color. That's because down here you have to apply the color to the style. There's also an auto apply, so this will allow you to go and change whatever you want. The only problem with that is that you'd have to go and undo to get back to your original style, which is black there. So I don't normally have that turned on. I prefer to just apply it manually. And as you see here, that style has changed over here to be the color that I've chosen for color 1. Okay, so I'm using an Intuos Wacom tablet, and I can't undo. Wait, undo. Okay, so I have pressure sensitivity, and when my brush is selected, up here in my options, you have to make sure that pressure is turned on, and I can set my minimum and maximum size. So once I set those sizes, I get my different strokes. I've also gone in and I've already pre-configured a lot of my shortcuts to what I need them to be. So on my Wacom tablet, I've got different things set up for that. However, there are some other things that you might want to turn on in your preferences. The first and most important one is to make sure that your onion skin is turned on, and you can set it up whatever your preference is for onion skinning. The next one I normally turn on is to autosave my scene, and that's why I saved at the very beginning, because it's going to send you an error message saying that you cannot save after the first 15 minutes. It will tell you that you can't save because you have not saved a file yet. So I normally save at the very beginning, and then it will automatically back up every 15 minutes. The next important option is under your drawing. Each level has a different option where there's a default level type. You can only have one or the other. Either you're drawing as a vector drawing, or you can choose to draw as a raster drawing. So the vector drawing, and for that, normally you have this, I think comes at default around 20, and it sometimes is a little chunky. Right now it seems to be working fine for me. However, I normally just crank that all the way up to 100, and it's not as chunky as, actually, right. It gets less chunky the higher you go up. So I normally crank it to 100, and whatever I draw is pretty much on with what I've drawn there. The next column, I'm going to change this to raster as a default. So the raster lines now, as you can see, there are way more pixelated, and this is, it's gonna be nice and smooth if I have it set to actual pixel size. So the anti-aliasing is not too bad, but it's all going to depend on the size of your frame, and right now this is my pixel size here. Normally I would set up my canvas to be something more along the line of HD settings. So that one there is going to allow you to set up your rastering. And I normally keep my DPI at 72 because this is the digital environment and 72 is screen resolution. So I don't need to change that once I've set it. And a lot of these settings, once you've set your entire interface up, it will always reload with the exact same settings you had as the last time. I think that's about all I needed to turn on. Oh, I think animation default is speed in, speed out. I prefer ease in, ease out. So I've changed that, and that preference will stick. Okay, so I'm going to try a very quick animation now. First things first, I want to make sure my onion skin is on, and just because you've turned it on in your preferences does not mean it'll be on in your drawing. In your right click menu, you're going to find activate onion skin, and then you can, once it's activated, you can choose, do I extend it throughout the entire scene or do I work just on this one column? So right now I'm just going to leave it, actually no, I'll extend it for the entire scene. I also want to set my default back to raster, sorry, vector, and that should be good. Okay, and first I want to draw a line. Now I see a lot of people doing this and saying, oh look, there's a ruler, let me draw a line with ruler, and nothing happens. That's because a ruler is just a ruler. It's not anything that you can draw with. So on that note, I'm going to go here to geometry, or what do they call it? Yes, geometry, and I can choose that I want a line, and I can choose the thickness of the line. So I'm just going to, oops, undo. There we go. There's my line, and on my next layer I'm just going to draw standard ball. Oops, undo. So your up and down arrows are going to move you up and down in your schematic. So moving down, there's my ghosted image, and let's draw another sphere. Forgive my spheres. Actually, I'm losing my line. Okay, so in your X sheet, when you've selected a frame, it gives this little box here that I can grab and extend for however long I need it to go. Now you can see these two marks here are showing the beginning and the ending of my animation. So moving back here now, I'll move down one. Actually, I don't need that last one, and I can pull that back up. Sometimes it's tricky to grab these things. Come on. Okay. When you're doing your previews, always remember that you have to turn off your onion skin. It's a little annoying, but it's a small price to pay. So there's my bouncing ball. Let me stop it. Okay, so you can play around with a lot of the other tools that you have here. Like I said, I've already set things up as hotkeys, so when I am in my window, I can zoom in and out. And these hotkeys are on my Wacom tablet. My middle mouse button, which is middle mouse button on your mouse, would be to pan. However, they have the hand here to go into pan mode. And then next they have a, where is it? Is that it? That's a pinch. Right, rotate tool. So rotate tool, as obvious, it will rotate around the canvas. And let me reset view, natural pixel size. Okay, and I've also set that up as a hotkey so that I don't have to worry about that. Reset view. So I'm just going to go and create a new color swatch here. Let's make it red, and I don't need those. I'm just going to fill in my ball, and they give you another fill here, which allows you, I found it before, I can't find it again though, but there's another fill which allows you to fill multiple frames with one click. Nope, I don't want that. Undo. Okay, and apply. Okay, these palettes are per column. So there'll be one character here, he'll have his palette. There'll be another character here, he'll have his own palette as well. So each of these palettes here will correspond to the drawings that you're doing. I'm working on drawing B, and drawing B will have this palette. Drawing A will have a separate palette. I actually don't need red for this, so I can delete that. Drawing B though will have red because I'm going to use that to fill in each of my bouncing balls. Always remember, close your gaps. There we go. So that's my bouncing ball. Okay, here's another one that I've noticed quite a few times people had problems with, is that when they're finished and they say, okay, I like my animation, I want to export it, two things that you have to make sure of first. The first one is, and this should be done at the very beginning, is setting up your scene settings. So frame rate is set up there, and your background color. So when I'm exporting, right now this is transparent. It's showing me on white, but this is a transparent background color. So I'm going to turn this all the way up, and this is red, green, blue, and matte. So if I turn the matte all the way up, I get a pure white. So turn that off. Next thing I want to show is that when I am creating my project, alright, the drawing here is showing me, if I go to raster, I can set the width and height of my frame in millimeters and dpi. So it's hard to calculate them. I usually use Photoshop to get the right measurements for the right pixels that I need. But we're working with vector, so that doesn't really matter much. Alright, so now people want to be able to export the beautiful animation they've done, and as they've been working, they're having a hard time. A lot of people just start working in this area, and they've set this area for all their drawing, which I don't like this area. This area is for cleaning up of your scans, so I'm not going to be using that. But some people have made it to ink and paint, and they work on ink and paint, and they go over here, and actually I'm going to save my scene. I don't need to save as, file, save, and I also need to save these here. So I need to save my level as, and I need to make sure I have the right project. So here's my first demo. Go away. And I will name this my level, and that has saved this one, this level here. So if I go to bring this up now, Toonz projects demo, my first demo. Here we can see our levels. Okay, so I also need to save this level as well. So I'm going to go and say file, save level as, and this will be my level A, or my line. I'm going to save that. Okay, so there's my line, there's my level, and you can see up here the palette has the corresponding name to it. Now when we go and say load level, alright, here it's going to show you I have one drawing. It doesn't matter that I've held that drawing for 12 frames, it's telling me there's only one drawing inside of that level. This level here has 12 drawings, 12 separate drawings inside that level. So it doesn't matter if I set this at, put it on 2s, it would still only have 12 drawings. The scene is showing me that we're working with 12 frames. So if I grab all of these and I go to step 2, I take this, extend it to the end, take this, bring it down. Okay, so I'm now working on 2s, so the animation is a little bit slower now. And when I go into here, you can see it's still 12 drawings, and the scene has 12 drawings. Oh, wait, no, cancel. File, save scene, file, load level, and that should have changed. There we go. Right. So now it's saying my scene has 24 frames inside of that scene. This level still only has 12. Even if I took this and I said file, save level, file, load level, it's still showing me here that the level has 12 frames, and they've actually done a backup of my level just in case what I saved was incorrect. but it's only showing 12 drawings. Alright, so now we want to be able to export all this stuff, and they've been able to find saving the levels, loading the levels, saving a scene, loading a scene, but there's no way to really export any of these things. So a lot of people got very frustrated trying to figure that out. Export level, they said, well, let's try that, and looked in their level settings, and they said, all right, well, we can set a path to it, and that was about it. And when they went, when they went and said export level, and they're given this, there's not many options that they can use to export, and when and the format is only in image sequences, but this is only going to export each one of these drawings as a raster drawing in one of these formats. It's not actually going to create an animation of my entire scene. So I need to be able to create an animation of the entire scene, but this area here is for drawing, and we need to move to another area where we can find other options, because when I change any one of these tabs, these options here change. So under ink and paint, I can do checks to check and see if there are any breaks, if there are any gaps, check and see what can be painted. I can turn on a whole bunch of checks to see how things work. There's drawing tools, there's my toolbar here, the edit, undo, delete, usual standard stuff. I can bring up my windows, but there's nothing for rendering under this level, under this options here. When I switch to X-Sheet, X-Sheet will allow me to render. So I can create previews, but I can also create a final render that goes out. Not only that, I can go to my batches, and under batches I can add a render and find my scene. So here's my scene, and once I add that, there's actually 3 different versions. So it's doing a step version. So each step of the way it adds a different name to it, but I don't need them all. So I would only choose the last one, which would be that one. Can I delete these? Remove. Alright, so this one is my last one, and all of the settings that I need for outputting would be in here, but I haven't actually set anything yet. So I'm going to move back to my X sheet, and I'm going to set up my output settings. So in here we choose which camera we're using. We set our dimensions, and I want to say this, and actually that's the default dimensions. So I don't have to worry about that right now, but if I did create one of these at HD, I can select that layer, and then this will become active, that I can click on it and it will set up my dimensions based on that layer. But currently I'm working on a standard setup here. But this is, you can figure this out on your own. I'm not going to bother with that, and then you can set up whatever kind of preferences you want. They actually give you quite a lot of different custom presets. Alright, so we know we're starting at frame 1, we're going to 24, and it's a step of 1. So we don't need to shrink it. And here we go, save in, and it's going to go to the outputs folder, which will be created under our project. Okay, so here's the project root, and under here they're going to create a new folder which would be for my output. So for now I'm going to leave that, and here is my name. I'm going to call this bouncing ball, and I do not want a TIFF. I want this to be an AVI, and I'm going to go with XVID, and I'll leave settings to default. Alright, so once this is set up now, and I can once again do presets for everything that's in here, but I'm not going to do that. Now when I go back to my batches, add render, scene 1, add, get rid of those versions, remove. Okay, so we see here that, actually, no, remove it all, because I need to save scene, and save scene. Alright, so I've saved my scene now, and I can go back to batches and add render once again. Take that, add, and there's my scene 1. Okay, and here it's going to show me that we're outputting bouncing ball. So this is showing the options that I've selected to create this animation. And then I can go ahead and create more scenes for this to be rendered off later. I have not played with the render farm settings yet, but local seems fine. Right now I'm working on an i3 with 16 gigs of RAM and a 2 gigabyte video card. So I don't know what's being used the most when it's rendering this, but right now things do render fairly fast. So once we have all our tasks set up, I can click start, or if I didn't want to go through batch, I can just go and say render, and the render will output based on these settings. But I'm going to show you through batch, and all I do is click start, and it should be working on it. Or is it finished? Oh, right. See, status completed. And that was very quick, but it's a very small scene anyhow. So let's go and find that. See, OpenToonz projects. No. And there's outputs, and here is my bouncing ball. Okay, the next thing I want to show is that when I'm working my ink and paint, things are very good in here for my drawing, and I can set up my timing and everything here. Xsheet gives you a lot more room. A lot of these places can be remodified. For instance, I can do this, and that's pretty much like my Xsheet. However, as I showed you, these options change. So under Xsheet now, there's another, I think I've set it up to have this pop in, which that there is found by going window combo viewer. So I'm going to dot that on the top. Okay, and here I've got my levels, and here is a function editor. So the function editor doesn't have anything to do with my drawings, it has to do with motions and stuff. So over here they're giving me different things that can be animated other than the actual animations. So I can animate my table. Each of these here would be the same as having a peg on each level. So for instance, column 1 and column 2. So I can say, if I have column 2 selected, okay, there's column 1 and column 2. Oh, right, scroll over. All right, so here's column 2, east, west. So if I went and said 8, then you can see that's moved over. 14. So that will reposition based on how I set these up. Okay, and I just want to get rid of that. So delete and delete. Oh, delete. Okay, because I don't want to animate the pegs on those. I want to grab my camera and animate that one. So I can say oops, let's go 50. And on frame 24, oh, right, I also have to add, nope, I don't need to do it on this one. Set key, and I want to do minus 100. Okay, and as you can see here, it is calculating all of the in-betweens automatically, and I can set the interpolation, which I set as a global thing that I want ease in and ease out to be my interpolation. So when I play this now, I can see my workspace is showing that camera moving, but I want to see it through the camera, so I would have to actually switch up here to look through the camera. So I'm looking through the camera now, and you can see that's what the camera is going to see. So I can render that out. And once the render is complete, it's going to pop up a viewer. The animation still is found on your hard drive. So OpenToonz, projects, demo, outputs. So there's the animation I just did with camera move, and that's what this is. Okay, so that's showing you your X sheets and all the power that you can do of movements and stuff with camera, table, everything. And then there's also effects that you can. Okay, so the effects that you're going to want to do are going to come under their schematic window. So this software being used by Studio Ghibli, I kind of came into this software expecting it to work like an old software they used to use, where I guess they kind of brought certain things over, which was called Cambridge Animo, and that was a while ago. And they had a schematic as well, which was just as confusing to use as this one, but you can kind of get through some basic stuff. So this here is showing the schematic of my stage, which shows the table has 2 columns loaded on them. There's a camera here as well, which right now that's not attached to anything here, but these here are attached to the table. The camera moves independently. What we want to do is come down here and toggle between effects and stage. So I want to go to my effects. So here's my columns, here's my X sheet, and here's my output. So I want to be able to place an effect in between the X sheet, so it's going to encompass everything that's going to the output. So a very quick easy one is just a blur. So I'm going to put my blur in, and I'm going to attach from there and to there. So now there's a blur in between the X sheet and the output. So when I come in here, I can then set up how much of the blur it is. So let's increase that blur. Alright. Now unfortunately you have to enable another viewer. Here we go. So I have to turn on how I want to be able to view this final area. So this eyeball that I'm turning on here allows me to see what everything looks like as an output. So you can see there's my blur being added. I can decrease that blur. I can actually type in whatever I want. 4. Alright. So this is where you will set up your effects, and then once you have effects set up, over here in your X sheet, the effects area is now active. So before I was looking at the stage stuff, and now I can look at effects, and I can find my blur, and therefore the value of the blur, we've got it set at 4. I'm going to set a keyframe, and on frame 24, set key, I want it to be 4 as well. Frame 12, set key, this time I want that to be 0. Alright. So there I have a setup for that. And if I go and play it now, you can see the effect of my FX. So I hope this has been enough to help you at least get started. Don't be afraid to fool around and try some of the buttons, see what they do. Just click on things. The Japanese manual, of course, is the thing that has everyone kind of trying to find their own way. And through YouTube, a lot of people have been able to learn a lot of things. So some of these things are things I figured out, and some of the things I've learned from other YouTube videos. So here's my final animation. And enjoy animating then. Okay, goodbye.